the latter part of that question as well, which was if you could share with us your most prominent complexities, challenges, or constraints for Mr. Dressler first from a non-military operator's perspective in the DCA airspace.
Thank you. For my perspective as a medevac operator, we're actually very privileged because in terms of priority, when we use the term medevac, we move everyone out of our way, including Marine HMX. For some of our other members, however, for the ad hoc DC helicopter operators group, that is not the case. So from a law enforcement perspective, we have several operators, whether that's U.S. Park Police, Maryland State Police, Fairfax County Police, Prince George's County Police Aviation, and all of them operate in an unscripted way, in a sense, because they don't fly from point A to point B necessarily. So their challenges are even greater than mine because I have an intended destination for every time my ships or one of my fellow medevac operators goes in. Our complexity is really, as Mr. Allen said, the airspace is very small, has very little room to maneuver, and we have prohibited areas that we have to avoid as well. Add in the final challenge is just the high volume of helicopter traffic in a very confined space.
Thank you. And Mr. Van Vechten, same question for you from the military or Army operator's perspective operating in the DC airspace.
Yes, we have the same challenges as Mr. Dresser addressed, the prohibited areas, and we're on specific routes that we are cleared through by ATC, or if we're in a zone, we're in a specific zone. So we must stick to these routes and zones as directed and cleared by ATC. There is a large volume of rotary wing traffic at low level, which is always a concern, and then the volume of fixed wing traffic in and out of Reagan Airport.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, back to you. When the helicopter control and local control positions are combined at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower, do helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft share the same frequency, or do they remain on separate frequencies like when they are decombined?
They remain on separate frequencies.
And is that policy, or is that is there a reason for that that you're?
They're charted the helicopter frequency specifically, so the helicopter users are going to naturally contact the facility on that frequency.
Okay, so from an air traffic controller's perspective, are there advantages or disadvantages to having the helicopters and the fixed-wing aircraft on separate frequencies when it's combined?
Combined, it'd be subjective to each individual, but in my opinion, a positive would be it can help you prioritize your sequence of events or what you need to accomplish a little bit easier, having them separated.
Okay. Any disadvantages from an air traffic perspective?
Disadvantages, aircraft may step on each other utilizing two separate frequencies. You may miss an initial call or something of that nature.
Okay, thank you. And for Mr. Van Vechten and Mr. Dressler, once again, how about for yourself? For the Army operator's perspective, is there advantages or disadvantages to being on a separate frequency from the fixed-wing operators while you're operating there?
Yes, sir, both. First, the advantages. I don't have to continuously hear all the fixed-wing traffic, which would tie up communication between the pilots in the cockpit. The disadvantage was it leads to somewhat of a lack of situational awareness because I'm only hearing half of the conversation. So, for example, when I hear tower transmit and they say Brickyard 1234, clear to land runway 19, I have to anticipate and wait for that fixed-wing traffic to say, Roger, clear to land runway 19, or else I could end up stepping on him. So as you initially enter the airspace, you have to pause for a few seconds to see if there's anybody talking that you may not hear on a separate frequency.
Thank you. And Mr. Dressler, for you.
So we are split among our community. All of the civilian aircraft carry two sets of VHF radios. And in that case, you could be listening to two frequencies at the same time. So many of our members dial up the regular tower frequency on one and monitor it, and on the other we'll be up on the helicopter frequency. That depends on the pilot choice. The disadvantage to that is we also have a helicopter air-to-air frequency that we can communicate and deconflict amongst ourselves. And if you take that one out of play, you have no way to talk to anyone else. I prefer the simulcast same frequency model because I do like to hear all of the commercial traffic at the same time, so I can formulate my plan around that as well. I think the disadvantage is clear. It's a very, very, very busy airspace, and for all of us to be waiting in order to make a radio call without stepping on someone else is the massive disadvantage that I don't think there's a solution other than a split terminal.
Excellent. So I'm glad both of you mentioned stepping on, and just for context, when we say stepping on, that's I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when two people are transmitting at the same time simultaneously, and one essentially steps on the other, and one person or both people's transmission might be partially or wholly blocked out, correct?
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So along those lines, is there any way, and this one is for Clark, I'm sorry, Clark, is there any way for an air traffic controller to know if they were simultaneously broadcasting or had stepped on, or somebody had stepped on a frequency where an aircraft might not be receiving their full transmission? Are you aware of anything? Is there a side tone? Is there something that occurs that lets a controller know that, or is it just potentially lost transmission?
If the controller was given an instruction that would have required a readback and they did not receive the readback, they could assume that it was stepped on or the aircraft didn't hear it. But if it did not require readback, no, there would be no way for them to know.
Okay. And in your experience at DCA, is there a notable difference in the quality of radio transmissions from military versus non-military helicopter operators?
Yes.
Okay, and could you kind of elaborate on that for us? Give us an example.
Yes, among the medevac and law enforcement community, they operate newer aircraft with newer equipment. Like Rick had said earlier, they have dual radios where other operators are using other aircraft that are perhaps more dated and maybe only have a single radio versus dual radios that can impact communication.
Okay, so from along this same vein here, are there any particular operators that operate regularly within the DCA Class B airspace, or even type of helicopters that stand out to you as exceptionally challenging when it comes to communication quality?
We've had trouble in the past with the Air Force and Army.
Okay. And does the helicopter control position at DCA have a UHF frequency available for use if requested by military pilots?
Yes, there is one.
Okay. Have you ever known or have you ever experienced a military pilot to request a UHF frequency since you've been there? Or?
It's maybe occurred less than a handful of times.
Okay. And Mr. Van Vechten, for you, along this same thread here, are you aware of any feedback or have you had flight crews report similar concerns that they've received about the reception quality from their aircraft while flying here or anywhere around the area?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to shift modes just a little bit here to helicopter route history and the development of those, and with a little bit of a focus on Route 4 as well. So, Mr. Stowe, could you provide us just a brief explanation of what helicopter routes and helicopter zones are, if you can? If this is out of your area, please let me know. What is their primary purpose, and how do they fit into the airspace structure within the DCA Class B airspace specifically?
Absolutely. I would specifically reference Air Traffic Order 7210.3, when describing the helicopter route chart program. Chapter 12-4-1, helicopter route charts are graphic portrayals of discrete and or common use helicopter routes and or operating zones located in high density traffic areas. Their purpose is to facilitate helicopter pilot access into and egress from or operation within charted areas. And that's a direct quote, but generally speaking, these charts facilitate reduced or easier controller-pilot communications. There's a level of understanding when a helicopter pilot were to check in with a controller, reporting a route, what the expectation is, where they would be flying, where they would be ingressing and egressing. Overall, it helps with efficiency and streamlining traffic flows as well.
Okay. So along those lines, this for Ms. Murphy or Mr. Stowe, we heard earlier in Mr. Banning's presentation that the helicopter routes had no defined lateral boundaries. Could either of you explain why that is?
I can take a shot at it. So the helicopter routes are non-regulatory. They are merely recommended paths. It is expected that all pilots remain in contact with air traffic control while flying. As for the lateral boundaries, what is currently charted is nothing more than a symbol used to showcase the routes pictorially so that they look good, if you will, cartographically.
Okay, so how would, looking at those lines on a helicopter route chart, how do I know if I'm in compliance with that route from a lateral standpoint, if it has no lateral boundaries and it's just generally the area?
So I guess to build on her response, and I think to lead into the question, the charts are recommended for the purpose of streamlining pilot controller communication and expectation, so the controller doesn't have to continuously assign a route. Knowing that there's no prescribed lateral boundaries and there's general recommended altitudes unless the controller specifically assigns via clearance or operating instruction to maintain an altitude or comply with the published altitude, it would be incumbent on the controller to ensure that they're monitoring the route of flight and address any conflicts and maintain or ensure a proper separation.
Okay. Mr. Stowe, continuing with you, would your office have been consulted in a request for establishment of helicopter routes that transition the DCA airspace?
So the local air traffic manager is responsible for initiating updates, changes, or initiating new helicopter route chart establishment. They would generally work with the Mission Support Services service centers who would support establishing a local work group or task force, as it's referred to in the 7210.3, which would be comprised of local operators, and then a lot of local coordination work would be done, and then that would ultimately be passed off to the charting office to actually publish the charts.
Great. Mr. Fuller can thank you later because you just answered his question. Mr. Allen, are you aware of DCA Air Traffic Control Tower management and or the bargaining unit if they had any input or involvement in the development of the route structure at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower? Now, I think it's been in place for quite some time, so you may not have been working there when it was, but do you have any awareness if the facility did have input on that?
Whenever we made helicopter route and zone changes in 2023, I believe it was, it was facility driven between the bargaining unit and management.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, is there a requirement for the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart to be reviewed at any specific periodicity by any entity?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Ms. Murphy or Mr. Stowe, are you aware of any periodicity requirement that he might not be aware of for a review of those charts?
I would refer, since I have it in front of me, to the 72.3, again, same paragraph, that would require annual review as a responsibility from the air traffic manager for reviewing helicopter route charts.
Okay, so what would be the expectation of that review? Would that be documented in some form other than we conducted a review and everything remained the same, or would they fill out a report or some sort of correspondence through their hierarchy chain of command?
I don't know I'm not aware of a specific requirement. I would generally only be speculating or assuming that they would document it in some manner.
So, Ms. Murphy, would your office receive confirmation, let's say that facilities have conducted their annual review of their charts, their applicable charts, and then you would monitor that, or not monitor it, but you would see that or not?
No, Aeronautical Information Services only receives communication if and when a change to the chart is requested.
Okay. Mr. Allen, were you ever involved in conducting any of these reviews, assisting the air traffic manager potentially of the Baltimore helicopter route chart?
When I was a member of the helicopter work group, we did routinely review it, and that's how we came up with the changes that were implemented in 2023.
Okay. So I have to ask, I think I had it for later, but we're right at a point where it's probably a good point to ask this. Helicopter Route 4, the helicopter route in question in this event, do you recall either as part of the helicopter working group, as part of annual reviews conducted, or part of local safety council, anything that identified Route 4 as being problematic or conflicting with regard to your traffic flow at DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower?
Yes, we had those discussions.
Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
When we met with the larger user groups of the airspace and discussed different improvements, ways we can make the system safer, more efficient, it was brought up with several different options, either to eliminate a portion of Route 4, move Route 4 over to 295 in Maryland. And both of those options, we were told we were unable to do due to continuity of government operations or security.
Okay, thank you. So for Miss Murphy, do you have a history of the development of the helicopter route structure there? Like when they were established, these routes that transit the Class Bravo airspace at DCA?
Well, without records in front of me, I can detail a little bit. Route 4 appeared in totality on the first edition of the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart effective February 13th, 1986. It was largely unchanged until 1991 when air traffic added a compulsory reporting point at the Wilson Bridge. After that, there have been no changes until this early spring, post-accident, and we continue to work.
That is helpful information. So along with that, at its inception, do you know or are you aware, by looking at that back then, did DCA have a runway 1533 at that time?
I do not know without the chart in front of me.
Can anybody up there answer that question? Mr. Allen, do you know back that far if that runway had always been in existence there?
I wouldn't know that.
Mr. Fuller?
I'll take an IOU to get back with you and answer on that.
No problem. Okay. So my question would be, knowing what we know today with that route structure where it was would there have been an expectation that there would be consideration given to its proximity of the approach corridor to 33 and the departure corridor to 15 in this case?
I can take a shot at it. I think consideration of proximity and local traffic flows, patterns, or what the needs of air traffic are, it's going to be highly site-specific and dependent on traffic flow densities within the airspace that may change over time. Not having specific knowledge of DCA, but broadly, the helicopter charts aren't specifically established to maintain separation, that would still rely on air traffic control to actively separate aircraft.
Which brings me directly to my next question. Was Route 4 procedurally separated from the approach path to runway 33 or the departure corridor from runway 15?
To my knowledge, no. I would have to defer to local air traffic as to what the consideration was when the routes were established or amended.
Understand. Mr. Allen, what's your understanding of that?
No, it is not procedurally separated.
Do you believe that the controllers, the control workforce at DC Airport Traffic Control Tower has a similar understanding across the board that that is not a procedurally separated route?
I can't speak for everyone, but I would say a majority do.
Okay. Mr. Dressler, did you or any of the other helicopter operators that you've been working with in the group there have an expectation that Route 4 was procedurally separated from fixed-wing aircraft there?
No, we did not have an expectation it was procedurally separated, but our group rules of the road are pretty explicit in saying that we would never fly underneath an aircraft on final.
Okay. And Mr. Van Vechten, same question for you. Did the involved Army helicopter unit have any belief that Route 4 was procedurally separated, that if they were on that, they would be separated from fixed-wing traffic arriving 3-3, departing 1-5?
Yes, sir, I did.
You had that thing, and was that a similar belief across the unit?
Yes, sir. Following the incident, I contacted many of my fellow co-pilots that were there, and everybody had the same assumption that we were not allowed to cross the departure and approach path of 1533 while on Route 4. We were always told to hold at the golf balls down by the sewage treatment plant just northeast of Wilson Bridge or at Haynes Point, which I'd done 100% of the time when I was on Route 4 and 3315 was active.
Okay, so that may have confused a little bit. So so the belief there would have been that you did not believe it was procedurally separated. Because procedurally separated, just so we have an understanding, when I say procedurally separated, meaning if you fly that route at the altitude you're supposed to and an aircraft flies that approach the way they're supposed to, they will have appropriate standard separation and will miss each other if they are both flying their prescribed route, right? That would be procedurally separated. What you are saying is that you believed there to be a mitigation in place. You were aware they were not procedurally separated and that without a clearance from air traffic control, you would either hold at a particular area or request clearance to proceed across.
That's correct, sir. When I say procedurally separated,
Yes.
I meant that a procedure prevented us from crossing 1533
Very
while
good.
on Route 4.
I should have prefaced that with a definition there of what I was saying. So thank you for that. Mr. Allen, do you know if consideration was ever given or there was ever a request made or a proposal made, I should say, for an alternate north-south routing to either replace Route 4 or alter Route 4 to help alleviate the conflict of where it crosses the Route 33 approach corridor?
There was discussion, like I previously mentioned, to either remove a portion of it or move Route 4 over towards the east, towards 295. But the zones also allow for north-south flow.
Do you know how high that proposal made it in the request chain at all? Did you receive any feedback or disposition of that proposed?
I don't know how high it went.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, do you have any awareness from your office? Did that ever reach your level?
No proposals to remove Route 4 ever reached my level. I looked back through the system service reviews and the corrective action plans developed for the facility, and there were no records of requests to remove Route 4.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Allen, one last question for you in this area, and then I'm going to pass it along. Who, from your experience working at DC Airport Traffic Control Tower, who is the primary user of the helicopter routes inside the Class Bravo airspace? Is it a real mix? I guess what I'm asking is this a mix of a lot of helicopter operators, or is it primarily the military using the routes? How is it split up there? Or is it just a total mixed bag?
I would say a majority would be the various military branches with some of the other users mixed in at a lower level.
And how about Route 4 that was being used that day? Who was the primary user of that, or users?
It would be the military.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. I'll pass it along to Van.
Okay, I'll be asking questions about helicopter operations in and around the national capital region. Colonel DeForest, could you describe the Army's mission in and around the national capital region?
Absolutely. And before I do, Chairwoman Homendy, Member Graham, Member Inman, families in the room, and those watching online, on behalf of the Army Aviation Brigade, as a husband and a father, I want to express my deepest condolences. This is something we think about every day, and your memory of the loved ones we lost are forever in my heart. The Army Aviation Brigade, specifically 12th Aviation Battalion, provides continuous, responsive, rotary wing support to senior military and government leaders in the National Capital Region to enable continuity of government and continuity of operations missions. On America's worst day, our nation's leaders trust the 12th Aviation Battalion will respond on a very short notice. It's a no-fail mission that requires regular, realistic training within the National Airspace System, and that's to maintain unit readiness for when the unit is called upon. Today, right now, 47% of our aircrew members in 12th Aviation Battalion are on mission lines waiting for that call. We're privileged to operate in the National Airspace System in the National Capital Region. We have a very unique mission. We attract some of the very best across Army aviation, and we hold ourselves to a very high standard. Our mission involves both the zones and the majority of the helicopter routes in vicinity of DCA. And we see the routes and the zones as a risk reduction tool. They provide known altitudes and locations to deconflict with other aircraft. And I just want to be clear, there's others that perform a similar mission. So we view the helicopter route structure as a risk reduction tool.
So do you consider the use of the routes essential to the mission?
Yes, I believe they are essential to accomplishing our mission safely.
And can you describe any types or categories of operations along those routes that are commonly used?
Now, could you be a little bit more specific on types of operations along the routes?
So you have mission essential operations, training operations, non-mission essential operations. So what would all those be considered essential?
And for the training, so the mission rehearsals that we do conduct, and I think we understand familiarity, aircrew familiarity of the region, so knowing the altitudes, the terrain, the buildings, the hazards, that is absolutely essential. And those routes provide predictability to our aircrews. So for our mission rehearsals, yes.
Thank you. This is questions from Mr. Dressler. Could you describe helicopter operations, non-military helicopter operations in the NCR, National Capital Region?
Certainly. Since 2001, all of the civilian helicopter operations are mission only, and they're comprised of law enforcement with various entities I mentioned, U.S. Park Police, FBI, Metropolitan Police Department, Prince George's, and Fairfax counties, to name the law enforcement I can think of, and then all of the medevac operators. So medevac is easy to explain, that we're transporting critically ill patients, usually from tertiary treatment facilities outside of the city, to some of the world's best trauma centers, including Washington Hospital Center, George Washington Hospital Center, and Georgetown. And the transport of those patients into those critical areas in a very ground traffic laden environment is a lifesaver day in, day out. On the law enforcement side, the law enforcement officers perform both patrol, and then they may, in fact, transition into operational status during an active pursuit of some kind, generally speaking, a priority call of a crime against person, meaning homicide, carjacking, etc. And those operations have no specific destination in mind. They're merely performing those orbits or those pursuits while in flight.
So for those common non-military operations, is it considered the helo routes as essential for completion of those operations?
Yes and no. By and large, non-military operators use zones, and there are a number of reasons for that. And one of those reasons is to deconflict with military operations who are primarily on routes. In the case of medevac, we may not know exactly where our start point is, and there may not be a convenient route to get a critically ill patient where they need to go. In the case of law enforcement, these were originally in the 80s called police zones, and the reason for that is because other traffic would be confined to routes, and police would have the ability to patrol in those zones. So I think it's a mixed bag. Some of the routes, including 2 that were deleted after January 29, I would say are essential to our operations because they provide the safest way to transit east-west in the route structure. They're predictable. Zones, one limitation of the chart is that the altitudes are maximum altitudes. So, for example, a zone altitude might be a maximum of 1,400 feet, and that doesn't afford as much predictability as some of the routes themselves are very altitude specific. Route 4 along the Potomac is one of them at 200 feet, at the 200-foot cap. But if you could imagine then that a zone could be a maximum of 1,400 feet, so you might have a helicopter operating at 1,200 as a police helicopter conducting FLIR operations. You might have us at 1,400 feet. You might have others at different altitudes, and that presents a challenge in the zones.
And that deconfliction, is that done by ATC, the controlling agency you're talking with, or is that all visual or ship to ship?
It is, because it's Class Bravo, it is primarily ATC. All of us provide an initial request, which sounds like our route of flight. So we might ask for Zone 5 to RFK to Washington Hospital Center, for example. And air traffic control will clear us for that route. That's that efficiency portion that is really essential. It cuts down on our radio traffic and gives us predictability. In this airspace, I think I mentioned it earlier, that we have the ability to talk on air-to-air frequencies, but unlike other cities, because the Class Bravo airspace surrounds Washington, D.C., it's very, very challenging to deconflict ship to ship. Instead, you can't focus on more than one primary thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a primary thing. So focusing on the tower frequency, on the helicopter tower frequency as a primary focus because it's so busy, doesn't afford you much time to call another ship and deconflict. That is different than other cities, including Baltimore, and where you might very well say, hey, I'm MedStar 2 and I'm lifting off of shock trauma, and then other people in the area will be able to deconflict with you. So greater than 99% air traffic control.
Okay, thank you. And when operating, do the non-military operators have special considerations when deciding to use a route, one of the helo routes? Is there special considerations within the local operating area that helps you determine whether to use the route or not?
I don't know of any other than individual company policies. So my company's policy, after a near miss, unfortunately in 2017 with Black Hawk helicopters, my company restricted our ability to use anything between Key Bridge and the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. So we cannot use Route 1 or Route 4 because of the helicopter volume. We're also altitude limited, so by our operation standards, we cannot fly lower than 300 feet day or 500 feet at night. And so those are limiting factors that might vary company to company or unit to unit.
Thank you. Mr. Van Vechten, as a standardization pilot, what are the training standards for maintaining altitude on a particular route?
Pilots are expected to maintain their altitude plus or minus 100 feet.
If a helo route with a defined ceiling of 200 feet, would those standards apply?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't think there's any expectation that we can maintain an altitude plus or minus 0. There's too many limiting factors. So, again, talking to other pilots, I think the reasonable expectation is that being off on altitude by 50 or 70 feet, one way or the other, would not lead to a catastrophic event.
Okay, so for a ceiling altitude of 200 feet, 250 feet would be acceptable as a training standard?
No, sir. I mean, if a pilot is continuously above the altitude, they're going to try to correct. I'm going to make them correct. It's where they stay above it where it's a problem, but we call it bracketing, so a kind of above and below the altitude while you're trying to maintain a constant altitude.
Okay, thank you.
May I address that as well?
Certainly.
I hate to disagree, but at least on the civilian side, that is a hard altitude for us. We do not accept a plus or minus of 100 feet in the DCA route structure. That's maybe a commercial flight standard, but that is unacceptable and how none of our civilian members are trained in the DC airspace. So a 200-foot altitude or 300-foot altitude is a hard ceiling for us.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Van Vechten, could you describe the purpose of the annual proficiency and readiness test in the Army?
Sure. It's to determine a pilot's ability to perform the unit's mission.
And what could you go into a little more detail on what all that involves?
Yes, it includes the instrument flight evaluation, the standardization flight evaluation, a written exam, and a night vision goggle evaluation.
Okay. And is it common to conduct this evaluation at night on MVGs?
Yes, it is. The standardization flight evaluation does not give a mode of flight. The NVG, night vision goggle evaluation, obviously must be conducted under night vision goggles. The standardization flight evaluation, if conducted under the most demanding mode of flight, which is NVGs, will count for both evaluations, so you don't have to waste the blade time doing a daytime standardization flight evaluation and then going back out at night to do the same task under goggles. You can accomplish both at the same time.
Okay. Since we're talking about MVGs, can you estimate the percentage of night Army operations where NVGs are utilized?
Can you clarify, please? What
Just
you mean?
like, are MVGs normally utilized during almost all Army night operations?
Yes, ideally that would be the case. I would much rather be aided with night vision goggles than unaided, of course.
And is NVG crew proficiency important?
Yes, it's extremely important. Night vision goggles is the most demanding mode of flight, and so that's what we would train to the most rigorous standards.
Can you recall what the requirements are for that?
As far as annual,
yes.
It's 9 hours semi-annual per semi-annual period, 18 hours total, and you must fly 1 hour of NVGs every 60 days to be considered current.
Okay, thank you. And for people to help everybody understand the benefits and limitations of MVGs, could you describe what some of those advantages and disadvantages of using MVGs are from an operator perspective?
Sure. First, the advantages, the quite obvious ones. Best visual acuity while unaided is 2200. So where 20/20 would be like good vision, your best visual acuity you're going to get while you're night unaided is 2200. So the ability to see is the number one advantage with night vision goggles. It amplifies light, allows us to see in darker environments, and provides better acuity for the pilots. The negatives, depth perception, obviously is much more difficult to judge because we have monocular vision, whereas right now I'm using binocular vision, so it's much harder to judge depth perception. It was mentioned earlier, the limited field of view, so approximately 40 degrees compared to roughly 180 degrees, what I have right now. But it's also, it's easy to confuse ground lights with aircraft lights. You can see through haze, which is an advantage initially until you're fully engulfed in poor weather, and then it becomes a disadvantage. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages.
And what about being able to see aircraft silhouettes? Do you just see point lights, or can you actually make out the shape of the aircraft?
Well, it really depends on the distance from the aircraft. Normally, I'm not close enough to make out the silhouette of an aircraft. So they mentioned earlier about looking underneath your goggles. So as you're flying night vision goggles and you see a light that is potentially a hazard, it's common practice to look underneath the goggles to verify what it is, because you could very easily confuse, say, a vehicle passing on Wilson Bridge as an anti-collision light as it goes across, or a vehicle on elevated terrain making a turn. It flashes into your eyes, so you must visually acquire what it is. So you really can't see the silhouette. Our goggles have trouble seeing blue and green lights, so the right side of an aircraft would be much more difficult to see. A red light is much brighter, and then white lights obviously are bright as well.
And how are the crews trained to compensate for the more narrow field of view?
By scanning.
Could you explain that a little bit more, please?
Yes. So we have a saying: we cannot increase our field of view, but we can increase our view of the field. So as I scan my head from left to right, I kind of move my eyeballs from left to right inside the goggles, increasing my view of the field. We try not to get tunnel vision or get fascination fixation on an object. So we're constantly scanning to pick up different reference points to pick out objects in the distance.
And that's a common training technique?
Yes.
Okay. So this question's for Mr. Allen. From what you've heard...
Mr. McKinney,
yes.
Can you hold for a second?
Certainly.
I would ask that witnesses put away their electronic devices. If you are communicating with your party tables, you should not be doing that. Please put them away. If your party wants to ask a question or get information to you, you can ask it during the Q&A period. Thank you.
Okay, this question's for Mr. Allen. From what you've heard regarding the use of night vision goggles by flight crews, would it benefit air traffic controllers to be trained on the advantages and limitations of NVGs?
Currently, air traffic control we don't get notified that they're using NVGs. We wouldn't know, as far as from an air traffic standpoint, operationally, what that would look like. I think we would need more input on their uses.
Would the knowledge of the NVG limitations affect how air traffic controllers handle the traffic?
Potentially.
Okay.
Can I add to that?
Certainly.
So it would generally be the expectation for air traffic that for Class B operations, all aircraft receive traffic advisory safety alerts, and air traffic provides separation services to all aircraft. We're also heavily dependent on see and avoid and relying on 91.113. I would refer to the 7110.65 Class B separation criteria for helicopter to helicopter would be that IFR or VFR helicopters are not separated from other helicopters, so it would be dependent on pilots seeing a void, independent of the use of night vision goggles.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll pass my time over to Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. I want to go back to something that Mr. Allen said when we asked about moving Route 4, if there had been any discussions about changes to Route 4. You said that the response you got was something to the effect of continuity of government operations and security. And then it piqued my interest, Colonel DeForest, because in the mission statement that you said, you mentioned continuity of government operations. And it made me think, was the Army, you or the Army, aware, or did you see any proposals that you were able to provide feedback on regarding changes to Route 4? It piqued my interest that the wording was very similar to what the response to DCA Tower was, and then the Army's mission. That's for you, Colonel DeForest. I apologize.
Okay. I thought it was for the colleague next to me. So that specific route is an option for our air crews, or it was an option. And when we look at our response times of our air crews in certain locations within the National Capital Region, so Route 4 was heavily used by our air crews on our mission rehearsals.
So my question was, were you aware of any proposals to make changes to that route?
The only proposal for a change that I'm aware of involves noise abatement, not necessarily lateral movement. So noise abatement was the only proposal that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Mr. Allen, you mentioned when we were talking about radio transmissions and some of the difficulty with some of the operators, you mentioned both Muscle and Pat, that you might have more challenges with the radio communications with them. Are there any other concerns or challenges when Muscle and Pat are operating in the DCA airspace that raise concerns for controllers?
I think additional concerns are they do conduct a fair amount of training missions. New folks arrive on base or maybe come up from a National Guard unit or something that aren't as familiar with the airspace. So being unfamiliar in a high volume, high complexity airspace naturally has its own challenges.
Mr. Van Vechten, or perhaps Colonel DeForest, do you have a response to that, or some additional information, insights that you want to share? Does that surprise you that there might be more concerns when particularly Pat is operating in the DCA airspace?
What I would add is our participation in specifically the DC Rotary Wing working groups. That has not been raised to our, at least the unit level, that there was a concern with the Pat call sign. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Van Vechten.
Yes, I was a member of the DC Helo Route User Working Group. Some of the concerns that were brought up were noise abatement was the main one. And then when police and MedStar are operating in the zones, just keeping military rotary wing aircraft out of the zones. That was a couple of the concerns that they brought up, because we know that when a police helicopter is in pursuit, both people inside the aircraft are probably looking inside or looking down in the street, and they're not looking outside the aircraft. So we avoided the zones that were active, and anytime Falcon, which is the DC Metro, was active in a zone, we would avoid those zones. But I was not aware of any requested changes.
Mr. Allen, going back to the proposal to make changes to Route 4. Do you recall when that proposal was made?
We had attempted it when I was part of the helicopter working group in the 2021-2022 timeframe.
Okay, thank you. And was there a documented proposal that you recall?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Mr. Dressler, we've talked about concerns about certain operators in the DCA airspace. From your perspective, are there any operators that you feel cause concern for your operations?
Unfortunately, yes. And I don't take any pleasure. I'm a former Army aviator, and I'm a retired Air Force officer. And I don't like to say that that the Air Force First Heli is a concern, and I really don't like saying that 12th Aviation is a concern. But it was a widespread concern, and it was noted to the battalion commander previous to the current one in about 2022 or 2021 by a member of our group that there was a significant issue with both training and attitude toward operations within the DC airspace.
And could you expand, so how did that affect your operation?
Well, when you combine that with our 2017 near miss, my company and the other operators in the area either curtail operations or there's not much we can do when we have a medevac patient and we're trying to get a critically ill patient where we need them to go. But our best answer is to maintain extra vigilance. It's an extreme challenge, especially when those aircraft are not usually transmitting on ADSB, and I can't see them on my traffic system, and all kinds of challenge inherent there. I think our best answer is extreme vigilance. I know in our company policy we fly as high as possible, so we'll take the maximum of any of the zone or route altitudes. And the air traffic controllers, we have a fantastic relationship with them and have always had that, where we can ask for something different. So if I need to ask for a deviation, and the same with all of our members, we're not bound by that, and they'll grant those requests whenever possible. The best answer I have for you is see and avoid, which is the basic tenet of every aviator on the planet.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to a different question because that's twice now that I've heard see and avoid being used. So, Dr. Kastner, if you could talk about see and avoid, what are some of the benefits of it from a pilot's and an air traffic control perspective, but also what are some of the limitations of see and avoid?
Well, see and avoid is one of our most basic, familiar cognitive perceptual faculties. Is when we use our eyes, ears, and attentive minds to look out for hazards, anything that might get in our way. The advantages is we have a lifetime of experience of using it, so we don't need the user's manual. And then comes the problems associated with it, in that our ability to pay attention is very narrow. Even our focused vision, if you hold your thumb out at arm's length, that's about how much you can see in focus at any one time. You could hold a book or a page behind it, and if you stare right at your thumbnail, you find that you can't read the words even beside them. So that's quite limited right there. So we get good at knowing where to point it, and we also benefit greatly from any kind of clues, hints, tips, where to point our eyes in a complex situation. And the more we know, the more information we get, the better we get at it.
Also for you, Dr. Kastner, one of the questions that Mr. Soper asked of the panel members were some of the complexities of operating within the DCA airspace and some of the things that were mentioned was a mix of traffic, the nearby airspace of other airports, prohibited areas. It's a small airspace. So we've got this high-density airport, mixed traffic with different performance capabilities. We've got nighttime conditions. We've got intersecting runways. We've got cultural lighting. So with all of those things, again, if you can speak sort of from the pilot's perspective, but also a controller's perspective, what do all of those complexities do to human performance and how we operate?
Well, they challenge it, for sure. It makes it harder. But again, the more I know about them in advance and the more information support I get while I'm exercising that vigilance, the better it's going to be, certainly.
What about in terms of, if you can expand a little more, in terms of workload, situation awareness, how do we manage all of those things, and how are we able to do it? We know that controllers are able to operate with these complexities. So what are some of the processes that they go through? How do they manage all of this information in order to make efficient decisions?
It's all very challenging. And we get so many sources of information coming our way. So, for example, we talked about hearing other aircraft on the radio. What we call the party line. You gain so much awareness. You can gain so much awareness by listening to what other people are saying. What are they doing? What are they having trouble doing? Spotting another aircraft? I want to know if I'm that aircraft that they're having trouble spotting. You just take whatever clues are out there and, of course, provide as many as you possibly can with your charts, your ATC directives, your training, anything.
Speaking of charts, you're familiar with both helicopter and airport charts, given your experience. Looking at the DCA and the helicopter charts for this area, is there other information that you think is missing? More information is needed? Less information? Is there any insights that you have from a human factors perspective on the charts as they're currently presented?
Yes, I like both charts, and I would like them to be one chart. I would like the information on the helicopter chart to also be shown in some way on the airplane charts and vice versa. If there are helicopters operating in the vicinity of my approach course, my glide path, I at least want to know about that. And we spoke a bit about airport familiarity. That's just the kind of thing that I'd like to know when I'm coming to DC for the first time or the second time. The experienced pilot probably already knows about it, but for me coming in there the first time, it's the first thing I want to hear.
Some might argue that these charts are already full of information, and is there a risk that by putting more information, we're just cluttering the chart, and that information is just going to get lost?
Yeah, you really have to weigh the costs and the benefits there. Certainly more symbology on the chart is going to make it more complicated, but then what's the cost of not knowing about it at all? It's a tough needle to thread, but I think this one, there should be something there.
Mr. Banning's opening presentation of the air traffic control audio. The controller was talking to a lot of aircraft at this time. We've got a helicopter that's got visual separation. So the expectation, of course, is that they're going to see and avoid. They said they have the aircraft in sight. What does that do to, from a controller's perspective, how does a controller from the human factors perspective. So I'm talking to another aircraft, and how do I switch gears from this primary task that I've got aircraft calling me, I need to talk to them, now I need to shift gears and say, wait a minute, this guy who I thought was maintaining visual separation is now on a conflicting path with another aircraft. And so how does that information processing work, and how do we shift gears in order to, from that primary task to another primary task?
Well, I'm certainly no air traffic control expert, so difficult, but it sounds like workload and complexity to me. And another thing we call context switching. It's very difficult. Suppose you're having two conversations. You're talking to someone in the room and someone on the phone. It actually takes a while to go back and forth. You have to reload the details in your mind. It's the same thing we explain why it's dangerous to text and drive or talk on the phone and drive. Switching back and forth takes time.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's responses. That's all the questions I have for now.
I'd like to shift to the history and activities of the DCA Helicopter Working Group. Mr. Allen, we learned through post-event interviews that there was a DCA Helicopter Working Group founded at the DCA Airport Traffic Control Tower that may have looked at these very concerns, and that you participated in the activities of this group for a period of years. Is that correct?
Yes, I was on the helicopter working group in the early 2020s through 2023.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Could you please step us through the origin of the group for what you know, and what was the catalyst of it being formed?
The helicopter working group, prior to me joining it, had always, as long as I had been at DCA since 2013, there was always some version of it. And as time went on, the panel members may have changed over the years, but it would consist of management personnel and NACA bargaining unit employees, and their level of involvement as they saw fit for the group.
Did this group have a mission statement, a statement of work, or anything along those lines?
I don't recall specifically.
That's fine. What organizations or personnel were represented on this group?
The group itself was contained within the facility. Like I said, it consisted of management personnel and air traffic controllers, bargaining unit employees.
Could you tell us a little bit about the activities of this group?
Yeah, the group would, they would meet, discuss any challenges, any operational challenges that they had seen. If there was any safety reports or data that was available, they would discuss that. We would provide, when I was on it, we looked at the mandatory occurrence reporting data as a driver for some of the changes that we were able to implement, and we would provide outreach to all the various user groups.
What were some of the participating user groups?
I can't recall specifically, but there was always multiple law enforcement agencies available, multiple medevac, and multiple branches of the military would be present.
What are some of the advantages to speak with the users and show them your operation? Would they also perhaps speak to their concerns with you guys?
Yeah, so it's a great tool to provide that outreach to the user group that you're servicing, providing services for every day as our customers, and vice versa, what we can do better for them. Anytime you can take the user out there in the airspace and put them together with the controller and share those stories, share that perspective, and get eyes on what each other's operation is, that's that much more knowledge that you can gain, that much more safety that can be gained by that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you recall if, while serving on the helicopter working group, did the group ever propose changes to the helicopter route structure, which we've kind of already discussed Route 4, so we understand that portion. But did the group ever propose changes or any other operational safety improvement change recommendations that would pertain to operations within the DCA Class Bravo airspace?
Yeah, we proposed several others. We proposed lateral boundary changes to some of the zones, and in addition, altitude changes to certain zones and routes.
Was there any formal, safety risk management process conducted in assessing these change proposals?
Yes, and I forgot we did publish a new transition point further away from the airport for the helicopter users. Yes, with the changes, we conducted a formal safety risk management panel.
Do you recall the response provided or the disposition of any of the group's recommendations? And if so, how or from whom were you informed or advised?
We conducted the safety risk management panel after multiple rounds of meetings with the user groups and making adjustments as needed and settled on a final product. We conducted the safety risk management panel, and I believe the final document, there was no hazards identified with the changes that we were going to make. With that, since there was no changes left to make, we had environmental study done. That was completed, and the last part was charting the changes that we had proposed.
I'd like to get back to that Government Accountability Office proposal about the noise abatement in just a minute. But Mr. Fuller, having heard this information, do you recall ever being made aware of these proposals or having advised management at the district or facility level in responding to these proposals?
I believe the specific proposal he's discussing was in 2022, 2023, sometime around that frame. And those helicopter chart changes were made and weren't effectuated.
Okay. In 2019, this is what we were talking about just a minute ago, the Government Accountability Office was tasked with conducting a study into the problem of helicopter noise over the Washington, D.C. area after a spike in community noise complaints. It is our understanding that the DCA Helicopter Work Group reviewed these findings from the study and developed a series of recommended changes to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart, which were presented at a helicopter symposium held in November of 2022. What are some of the changes that were presented at that specific symposium, Mr. Allen?
After the completion of the GAO study of helicopter noise impacts to, I believe it was out to a 30 nautical mile range from DCA, the regional administrator had come to DCA and shared the study with us and asked us to take a look at it and see, hey, is there anything better the FAA could do with noise? The local helicopter work group took that information, reviewed it, and then looked at our own internal safety reporting that we had and saw some areas where, hey, we could make this better. So we can improve noise and improve safety all in the same scope. So with that, we came up with the proposed changes that were implemented in June of 2023.
Upon reviewing your proposal during the helicopter symposium, I noticed that you had, Mr. Allen, your facility had hoped to chart hotspots on the Baltimore-Washington helicopter chart. Can you speak a little bit about what are the hotspots? What are hotspots, first of all? And what were you trying to do by requesting them to be put onto the helicopter chart?
So hotspots are an airport diagram depiction to show areas of concern on an airfield map. We were attempting to, since we were not able to change Route 4 and the proximity of some of the other routes or heliports or hospitals, we, if we weren't able to change them, or we can't move a hospital, then let's at least draw attention to it for the users. So our attempt was to take something similar on an airport diagram, apply it to the VFR helicopter chart, and draw attention to it, since we weren't able to change the location of helipads or, in this instance, also a route.
Mr. Allen, what was the feedback received by from some of the attending helicopter users about the proposal to add hotspots to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart?
From my recollection, everybody was satisfied with, adding an additional layer of safety to the helicopter map.
Mr. Allen, as we spoke before, you mentioned that there was a safety risk management panel convened in approximately April 2023 to assess the potential risk of these proposed helicopter route chart changes to include the hotspots. You already kind of summarized. Well, could you please clarify, what was the findings? What were the findings of this panel? And did the panel agree with the proposal to chart these hotspots?
The safety risk management panel concurred with all the proposals and identified no hazard.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, this is for you. FAA order, Joint Order 7210.3 outlines the procedures for requesting changes to aeronautical charting. What steps did your office take to address the request to chart the hotspots on the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart? And was there a formal response to the request?
Yeah, thank you. So Aeronautical Information Services did receive a request for multiple chart changes to the Baltimore-Washington helicopter route chart in June of 2023. We implemented all of the changes, as Mr. Fuller mentioned, with the exception of the addition of hotspots. Hotspots are associated with ground or surface movement and are not within the VFR aeronautical chart specification.
Is your group able to give suggestions as how to implement the intent of a hotspot without making it called a hotspot?
Could you clarify the question?
So I understand that hotspots were normally used for surface areas of confliction, maybe, and that they want to bring